Well, a very good evening to you with a Monday, May 28th edition of the CBC Evening News. I'm Ryan Broom. In our top story, the social partners in Barbados are committed to the island's fixed exchange rate and preserving the value of the country's dollar. Prime Minister Mia Mottley says that's one issue on which they all agreed at today's meeting of the social partnership. Kent Jerson has that story.
Fresh from her swearing in on Friday and that of her cabinet and other officials over the weekend, Prime Minister Mia Mottley convened a meeting of the social partnership at government headquarters. She arrived just before the scheduled 10 o'clock start. Before that, several ministers, officials from the public and private sectors, as well as the trade union movement, had made their way into the building. Before entering, the Prime Minister spoke to the media, saying the meeting was a briefing session that will inform how they move forward.
I'm very clear that in the absence of an opposition, that we have to have regular conversations with different entities in the country, and the social partnership is the main one. I've already had 2 meetings this morning, and later on today, we're going to also look at other questions pertaining to getting updated on the economy. And I hope that we can go broader soon in terms of what we start to discuss with the people. And then we're going to take a briefing again on the South Coast Ridge project before the end of the evening too. There's a pack there.
In a statement through the Government Information Service later in the afternoon, the Prime Minister gave assurances about the preservation of the Barbados dollar.
Today we had a 3-hour meeting with the leadership of the social partnership, and it really was very good, I think, on all sides. On Friday we will continue our dialogue because I believe we're all agreed that we need to work assiduously in an effort to stabilize the country's economy. After Friday's meeting, I will make a statement to the country so that I can contextualize where the country is at that stage and where the social partnership indeed is with respect to what we have to do. What I can say clearly is that all of us, each of us, is absolutely committed to the country's fixed exchange rate and the preservation of the value of the Barbados dollar.
Government is expected to continue meeting with other stakeholders during the week. Kent Jersey, CBC News.
Thanks, Kent. Well, the Barbados Workers Union is optimistic there will be a more meaningful engagement with the government. That's the sense of BWU General Secretary Tony Moore following this morning's meeting of the social partnership. She says there was a very frank exchange about the current state of affairs, where they want the country to be and how they intend to get there.
The discussions were very frank and open, and there was a kind of energy in the room and a sense that there is a definite commitment on the part of the administration to engage, to communicate, to share information, even if the information is not what we would want to hear or what we would want to be receiving, with the understanding that in order to get any meaningful commitment and then any movement, real movement on the many issues that have to be tackled, that has to be the approach.
And Ms. Moore says she's encouraged by the approach.
The Barbados Workers Union has been calling for that for some time now, and while we recognize this to be what some may term a honeymoon period, we feel satisfied that it may be a lot deeper than that, because when you start right, we believe that you will finish well. It is very instructive for us, therefore, in the Barbados Workers Union, that this was regarded as the first item of business following the swearing-in of a new cabinet.
In news now on the new cabinet, newly appointed Youth and Community Empowerment Minister Adrian Ford is on a mission to transform blocks across the island. He believes these areas are full of potential with many creative young people. He was speaking after arriving for the first day at his Sky Mall office. Minister Ford also intends to facilitate creative ideas from youth across the island.
I really have an interest in redefining the blocks, because persons believe that block life is just about guys sitting down in the ghetto doing nothing. I want to see the blocks being economic centers. I want to see the blocks being resource centers, oasis of businesses. And I think I have done it in Christchurch by Central successfully. I think that's why the votes will recognize that. But I really think that that the blocks, we have to get those blocks working. and I'll be going around Barbados to ensure that the blocks just don't remain a block culture where people believe that they sit down and do absolutely nothing.
Meanwhile, over in Bridgetown, newly appointed Education Minister Santia Bradshaw was meeting staff across the departments.
Well, I'm very excited, first of all, to be in this particular ministry. It is a ministry that has potential for not only the Barbadian children and certainly the future, but it has a huge responsibility in terms of the number of facets that we have to deal with in the economy. This morning I've spent basically meeting the staff of the ministry and trying to get acquainted with the various departments, trying to get an understanding from the various staff what the issues are. And so we have had in-depth consultation. We will do some more over the course of the next few days.
Just hours after being sworn in, the newly appointed Minister of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs, Cynthia Ford, was on the job. When CBC News visited her office in the Warren's office complex this morning, Ms. Ford, along with her Parliamentary Secretary, Neil Rowe, were busy greeting staff and familiarizing themselves with the role of the ministry.
And of course, we felt that the first stage would have been to start with the manifesto, look at some of the pledges that we've outlined to see how they can be incorporated into what is existing. We acknowledge that some aspects of this ministry would have been transferred to other ministries, and therefore we just want to get a clear understanding and some clear guidelines as to what our responsibilities are, what our remit is, and then go forward. So the staff were very kind to give us some briefing notes as to the role that the ministry played in the past and some of the achievements.
Ms. Ford says the Ministry of People Empowerment will affect Barbadians across the board, but she says particular emphasis will be paid to young people, whom she feels passionately about, and the elderly.
I don't know if the childcare board will still be assigned to this portfolio, but the elderly, and I see them every day. I know of them, not just relying on canvassing, but we see them in the church, we see them in the various villages, and our elderly are sometimes well cared for, but there are many hundreds of others who are really in need of moral, spiritual, monetary support, somewhere proper to live, somebody to hold their hand, to work with them. So we're looking at the elderly as well, and it's not only in the villages, but in our institutions across the island.
Now, there won't be any sweeping changes to the 2018 crop over season. Speaking to CBC News from his Sky Mall office on his first day at work, Minister of Creative Economy, Culture and Sports, John King, said the season will continue as has been planned.
I always trust the people who have been doing this for a very long time to again run a very successful crop over festival. But I will at the end of it have a chance to look at it, and I have some ideas of my own, and I've been listening to a lot of people on the ground for many years before I got here, so there are lots of things that I would like to see implemented in the future.
Now, he says while the culture portfolio has always been a dream of his, he is very excited about what he can do in the creative economy.
And I've always been one who believes that we must look outside of traditional jobs. We must also look at creative ways in which we sell not only our culture and our sportsmen or whatever, but our products, you know. And so I'm really, really anxious to, as they say, get your teeth into it. And I can't say definitively yet what our plans are, because we have to see where we are and what are the things that are needed. But I know, just like you, I am very excited about the prospect of bringing new revenue streams to the Barbados economy.
And Mr. King says after speaking to staff today, he plans to immediately address some of their concerns of environmental issues in the building. Well, yesterday, in a break from the traditional Government House location, the island's new cabinet members and parliamentary secretaries were officially sworn in during a grand ceremony at the Bay Street Esplanade. While the swearing-in ceremony was open to members of the public to attend, special invitees included regional prime ministers, members of the local business community, and the wider social partnership. Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley and Attorney General Dale Marshall were both previously sworn in on Friday. However, on this occasion, it was a mixture of some former cabinet ministers and some newer faces to political life who took the solemn oath of office. From Minister of Education, Technological and Vocational Training and Leader of Government Business Cynthia Bradshaw, to Housing, Lands and Rural Development Minister George Payne, to Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade Jerome Walcott, and Minister in the Ministry of Economic Affairs Marcia Cadell. And notwithstanding the celebratory occasion, in her remarks, Prime Minister Motley issued a sobering reminder to her new ministers that they will be held to the highest standard. In directly addressing the ministers, Pentecostal Reverend Jerry Seal made an appeal.
But I want to ask you, please live and serve with humility. You have an important job. You have people that are going to go when you say go, and come when you say come, and stand when you say stand, and get out when you say get out. Don't let it go to your head. Remain humble. When you become puffed up with pride, we will take care of you.
And an air of expectancy surrounded the Bay Street Jamaica area yesterday as Barbadians welcomed a new cabinet to office. Prime Minister Mia Motley says tough decisions lie ahead, but for now, many Barbadians are hopeful. Kareem Smith was there.
Thousands of Barbadians came out for the public swearing-in of a new cabinet, many with optimism and expectations, following a campaign filled with promises of a better tomorrow. The moment was one of pride for many Barbadians. As the 26-member cabinet took their oaths, the expectations are great.
I expect, first things first, that they will approach this job with focus, with honesty, with sincerity, with energy.
After 23 downgrades, everything has to be improved. You've got a poor bus service, you've got to work with that. You've got so many things. It is impossible to list all of them.
A lot of people might be expecting miracles overnight. I'm not expecting miracles overnight. It's going to be a long, hard road to bring Barbados back to where it used to be.
What are your expectations from them, these new ministers?
That they will do the best. They make a promise and on an oath, and they should stand up and stand out to what they believe and what they say we're going to do.
And while mindful of their optimism, Prime Minister Mia Motley reminded them that the task ahead would be no walk in the park.
Given the prevailing circumstances, I know that we will have to make a number of tough judgment calls, and very early in this administration. In all things, we pledge to act diligently and responsibly and to make decisions not on the basis of people's wants, but first and foremost on the basis of the needs of our people.
Reducing debt and increasing foreign reserves remain a major priority for government. In addition, Ms. Motley vowed full transparency and engagement with the public, along with a commitment to end the South Coast sewage crisis and secure wage increases for public servants.
I mention these things to let you know that the notion of mission-critical things are not pretty words on a piece of paper, but they are literally required by members of this administration, literally from their first day in office. And as to the rest of the week, we will deal with the issues of getting buses and public transport back again. We will deal with the issues of getting garbage trucks where the country has only a handful of trucks working the country.
Also at the ceremony were a number of regional prime ministers, as well as the only living national hero, Sir Garfield Sobers.
Philippians chapter 2.
Meanwhile, presiding Bishop of Barbados' District of the Pentecostal Assemblies of the West Indies, Reverend Jerry Seal, delivered a stern but simple message to the new ministers. Lead with wisdom, and we will follow you. Do otherwise, and pay the price. Kareem Smith, Cbc News.
Thanks, Kareem. Well, we take a pause here, but still to come, members of the Democratic Labour Party officially meet behind closed doors at their George Street headquarters for the first time since the election. That and more stories just ahead. Welcome back. Well, the question of whether the Democratic Labour Party will accept Prime Minister Mia Motley's invitation to suggest 2 people to serve in the Senate is still not clear. The DLP received the second highest votes in Thursday's general election, but they suffered a crushing defeat, losing all 30 constituencies. Today, several of the losing candidates gathered at DLP headquarters for a meeting which lasted from about 9 to just before 1 this afternoon. Our Sharika Griffith reports.
Those who attended declined to speak to CBC. However, it's understood the group came together as former candidates to review the election. A source who described the talks as frank and open also revealed that a decision has been made to convene a special meeting of the General Council to share the findings of the former candidates and seek a way forward. Those who attended the meeting also reportedly acknowledged that the party has a base which they believe is hurting and to whom it must report. Noticeably absent from the meeting were former Attorney General Adriel Brathwaite, former Education Minister Ronald Jones, former Minister of the Environment and Drainage Dr. Dennis Lowe, and former Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Economic Affairs, Jepter Entz. Reports indicate the meeting was called by former Prime Minister Frundell Stewart, who is still the party's president. It's understood another meeting was called for 5 this evening with chairmen and other constituency officials. Sharika Griffith, CBC News.
Thanks, Sharika. Well, a bushfire came dangerously close to several homes in Pine Gardens, St. Michael this morning. Fire officials were, however, quickly on the scene to avert any damage or injuries, and the thick smoke and raging flames were brought under control. Resident Valdine Broom spoke to our photographer, Chris Wood, who was on the scene.
My last daughter called the fire brigade, and they came. Then seemingly afterwards, it started again. We were just smoking, but then it exploded and it started traveling. So we called the fire engine again.
So you all had to evacuate?
Not really. We closed the window. It hasn't, it has not reached that limit, thank God.
Well, still to come, a look at some of the stories making headlines across the region. Welcome back. In news from the region, in St. Lucia, the National Emergency Management Organization, or NEMO, held a shelter management training session for disaster committees in the south of the island. The training comes ahead of the 2018 Atlantic hurricane season.
As the 2018 Atlantic hurricane season fast approaches its starting date, NEMO is taking steps to ensure communities are prepared before, during, and after a disaster. The organization teamed up with USAID to offer training in guidance and planning of the operations of a shelter to members in the South. Upon completion, participants will be part of NEMO's Shelter Managers team.
It is one way of being proactive and empowering persons in becoming competent shelter managers. It provides them with various skills, knowledge as to what is entailed at a shelter, what are some of the skills required of a shelter manager in order to ensure that our shelterees are comfortable when they do get to the shelter, when those shelters are activated and those persons are assisted at those shelters. It also provides an opportunity for further empowerment of our various disaster committees and also principals and alternates who would serve as shelter managers.
Over in Guyana, a 20-year-old mechanic who allegedly confessed to the murder of another man appeared in court today. The accused reportedly says he killed the man because he came onto him.
Police on Friday said that the mechanic has admitted to the murder of Guyana Goldfields Incorporated chain manager Neil White. Police spokesman Jairam Ramlakan said that after the suspect admitted to committing the crime, he took investigators to a 5th Street Alberton location where he handed over several items belonging to White. Among the items handed over was a knife, which police suspect is the murder weapon. Nightly News was told that the 20-year-old mechanic, during his confession, claimed that when he had gone to visit White, White allegedly came on to him and demanded that he, White, have sex with him. That's when he pulled out a knife and stabbed the supply chain manager to death. A credible source related to Nightly News that they're still trying to ascertain how he was able to bound White, suggesting that the suspect had help. The mechanic's girlfriend is also being questioned by police. She reportedly received several of White's belongings, including a portion of his money. Police said that an autopsy conducted Friday revealed that White, who was found nude and bound at this Thomas Street, North Commingsburg apartment on Monday evening, died as a result of multiple stab wounds. The suspect, who is known to White, was arrested on Wednesday on the east coast of Demerara in the vicinity of the Giftland Mall. The car in which he was arrested was also impounded by the police. Police say it is the same car which was seen as it sped away from the apartment building the night White was murdered. Police said the first suspect, who was also at the apartment the night of White's murder, is still detained and is likely to be released on bail soon as the investigation continues.